Hey everyone, my name is Jason, and in this video I'm going to show you how to calculate the correlation coefficient, known as R, for the Pearson correlation. So I'm not going to talk too much about the theory behind the Pearson correlation or about how you test the significance of the correlation coefficient. I'll save that for another video. In this video I really just want to focus on the calculations. And it is important to know that the Pearson correlation tests the strength of the linear relationship between two continuous variables. So I have my variable x and I have my variable y. And these are both continuous variables, and we want to see, are these variables related? How strong is that relationship? And that's what R is going to tell us. R is going to give us a value from either -1 to +1, and if that value falls closer to -1 or closer to +1, it's going to be a strong relationship, or it's going to tell us that there is a strong relationship between x and y. So let's get right to the calculations. Now this is how I set up my page before I actually calculate R. So I put down all my variables and all my steps before I even start doing any calculations. And I always keep my formulas handy, just in case you forget. And it's a good idea to keep your formulas in the order with which you expect to use them. So I expect to use these formulas in this order. Now everything is set up here, so it's easy to go through it, or it's easy to keep track of what you're doing and not get too bogged down. So let's get started. I like to start from left to right. And in this case, I have a column right here which is not filled out. And this column is x times y. So I'm going to fill out this column first. And so x times y, all we're going to do is multiply the x value by its corresponding y value and plug that in here. So we have 0 times 4 is going to give us 0. 2 times 1 is going to give us 2. 8 times 10 is going to give us 80. 6 times 9, 54. And 4 times 6 is 24. Okay. Now I'd like to move down here from left to right. So sum of x, all we're going to do is sum up these values. So we have 2 plus 8 plus 6 plus 4. It's going to give us 20. Sum of y now, we sum up the y values. We got 4 plus 1 plus 10 plus 9 plus 6. That's going to give us 30. And then we're going to go down this column, and here we see n right here. N is the number of data points, the number of scores, the number of values. And in this case, because the value for x and the value for y belongs to one data point, we just have to count up how many there are in this column. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So n equals 5. So moving on here now, I like to go back to the left and go across. Sum of x squared. All we're going to do is square these values and add them up. So you can square them in your head, or you can type them in the calculator, depending on how quick you want to do this. I generally just square them in my head and then add those values up. So I'll do 4 plus 64 plus 36 plus 16. That's going to give me 120. Moving on, here we have sum of y squared. So again, I'm going to do the same thing. 16 plus 1 plus 100 plus 81 plus 36. That's going to give me a grand total of 234. And now we have our sum of xy column. So we're just going to sum up these values here. So we have 0 plus 2 plus 80 plus 54 plus 24. That's going to give us 160. So that's the easy part, summing all this stuff up. Now it gets a little bit tricky, and here's where we have to look at our formulas. So the first formula is for the sum of squares for the x variable. And good thing we did these descriptive statistics ahead of time, because now we can just simply plug them in. I'm going to write this out here. SSX equals sum of x squared is 120 minus, and then in brackets here we got to put 20 squared over n, which is 5. So I'll do this in two steps. First, I'm going to calculate that second part. So I'm just going to do 20 squared divided by 5 is going to give us 80. And then finally we're going to get 40 for our sum of squares x variable. And I'll do the same thing for y now. SSY is we're going to start off with the sum of y squared, which we already calculated, 234, minus, on top we're going to put sum of y, and we're going to square that over n, which is 5. I'm just going to do this in one step here on my calculator. 234 minus, that's 180, so we're going to get 54. Okay, and if you want to expand these calculations, go ahead and do that and practice them. But once you do them over and over again, you kind of start to develop these shortcuts for calculating. So I'm going to put 54 right there. Great. Now we only have 2 main steps to do. We only have 2 more formulas that we need to use. SP, sum of products. So good thing we have the formula here. We can just look at it, and we've already completed most of the information or the preliminary calculations that we need to do this formula right here. Sum of xy, well, we know that is 160. I just pulled it up from here. Minus, now we have the sum of x, which is 20, times the sum of y, which is 30, over n, which is 5. Okay, sum of x, sum of y. I'm just going to expand this, 160 minus, I'll do that quickly on my calculator here. It's 120. So we're going to finish up with a final value of 40 for our SP. And again, you can expand out this calculation I did here. But again, once you do this over and over again, it'll become like second nature for you, and you could probably do it all in one shot on your calculator. Same thing for R. Finally, we have R, and our formula for R is the sum of products divided by the square root of the sum of squares x times the sum of squares y. So, good thing we already have the value for SP. I'll just bring that in here. And we have our sum of squares x right here, and our sum of squares y right there. So I'll just plug both of those in here. And I'm going to solve this on my calculator real quick. I'm going to type 40 divided by bracket square root bracket 40 times 54, and then 2 brackets to close it off, and I get 0.86. So I did this all in one step on my calculator, but you can, if you're new to this, I suggest you sort of expand this out, follow your BEDMAS rules. That way you won't make a mistake, an easily avoidable mistake at least. So we have our R value of 0.86. Now that's a strong relationship. I told you before that we're looking at values between -1 and +1. So 0.86 is strong because it's pretty close to +1. So you would describe this as a strong positive correlation, or a strong positive relationship between variable x and variable y. Now in my other video I'm going to show you how to calculate or determine the significance of this value, and we're going to talk about linear regression and actually creating a formula based on this data that we can use to then predict values. But for now I just wanted to show you how to calculate R. So again, you can go back to the start of this video, see what I had laid out before we did any calculations, and try it yourself. Try going through this yourself, using the formulas, checking back with the video, and if you have any questions, please feel free to message me. If not, stay tuned for my next video, and have a great day. Cheers!